Welcome to the Restoration Activation Project video commentary series. Hi, Marianne here, and thank you for joining me. If you haven't already checked out my new book, Self-Mastery Guidebook, A Practical Approach to Progressive Co-Creation, I invite you to do so by clicking on the Self-Mastery Guidebook link below. You'll be taken to a page that will provide a brief description of the book, along with links to a full, more fleshed out book summary, as well as links to a couple of excerpts from the book. The book was written for those of you who are feeling a sense of urgency with regard to what's unfolding in this reality, what we're witness to on a day in, day out basis in terms of the conditions of this reality, the increasing intensity and pervasiveness of regressive-dominant co-creation, the increasing intensity and frequency of challenging circumstances or situations or relationships in our lives, and who are seeking means of addressing, co-creationally responding to these issues in ways that not only enable but help us advance in terms of fulfilling our purpose, both our encoded purpose and our unique purposes within this particular incarnation. And all of this being in the context of self-mastery work toward purpose fulfillment and progressing soul's evolution to the point of transitioning, being able to transition to higher vibration states of being and co-creation. The book will help you, if these commentaries are of benefit to you in your work, on your journey, pardon me, then I encourage you to buy the book, because the book provides a lot of foundational knowledge upon which pardon me, these commentaries are built. In turn, the book provides expanded information about many of the topics that I address in these commentaries. It's a very, very minor investment for a wealth of information geared specifically toward helping you attune to your own inner knowing about all of these things in the context of fulfilling purpose. Now, on to the topic of this commentary, or I should say the topics: time, timelines, and timing, which I will be exploring in the context of not only self-mastery work towards purpose fulfillment, towards soul's evolution, but within the context of the transition of humanity's current consciousness evolution cycle into the next cycle and the nearing convergence point. That convergence point being, pardon me, the actual point in time wherein our current evolution cycle ends and the next cycle begins. many of you are experiencing a deep-seated sense of urgency in terms of the things I mentioned at the beginning, in terms of the increased intensity and frequency and pervasiveness of regressive co-creation. Not only in the greater reality, but in our own life situations, within our work environments, within our home environments, within our relationships. Intensity, frequency of conflict within ourselves, in our interactions with others. This inner sense of disquietude or restlessness. This is in contrast to, and this sense of urgency being perceived in terms of or sourced in soul's impulses in the form of conscience and intuitive signaling. And this is in contrast to those who might be experiencing or have some sense of the increasing intensity of the regressive conditions of this reality and in our lives, but are experiencing fear and feeling sort of frozen in that fear. Some feeling even a bit panicked. In some cases, those who have, some higher order knowledge around what's going on, who have some understanding, awareness of this time of transition. And many of those, of course, who have no knowledge of fundamental knowledge of higher order truths, such as the principles of creation, the rules of engagement for this reality, but are just experiencing something that they can't put their finger on. So, which also increases the intensity of this whole unfoldment. This commentary has nothing to do with fear-mongering. The intention of this commentary is to acknowledge and provide informational support to those of you who are feeling soul-sourced a soul-sourced sense of urgency around all of these unfoldments. Now, having said that, if we become off-centered in that sense of urgency, we can easily slip into various states of fear. So that's the intention behind this, to help you avoid doing that by providing information that can help you approach all of this co-creationally, from a co-creational standpoint, in terms of addressing, contending with, dealing with your sense of urgency in progressive ways that enable you to continue progressing in terms of fulfilling soul's purpose, attuning to and co-creationally aligning with your encoded and your unique purposes for this particular incarnation. And if you haven't already done so, I invite you to watch my prior commentary about soul's purpose and unique purpose. So, this transition process, the cycle evolution transition process, could be compared to a birthing process, a grand scale birthing process, but nevertheless a birthing process, wherein not only the qualities of consciousness and their attendant energies, in other words, the progressive and regressive qualities of consciousness from which, or that inform our states of being and thus our co-creations in this reality, contraction and expansion of those qualities, as well as various features of this reality, contracting and expanding, compression and extension, time, for example. I work with a lot of people who have told me that they're having experiences of compressed time, or accelerated time, if you will. In other words, the lag, if you will, between a co-creational act and its effects is very, very short. Quick turnaround time between action, behavior, thought, emotion, and effect. The effects flowing therefrom. So compressed or accelerated time. Others are telling me, and some of these same people are having this experience as well, and other people are not having the compressed time, accelerated time experience, but having this extended time experience, drawn out time. Wherein whatever they're doing, whatever it is, whether it's something that they're in the flow of or not, although it's most often those who are in the flow of this work in particular, giving sincere effort, focused attention to this work. Every opportunity that they have are experiencing that sense of expanded time. In other words, they'll sit down to do some work or go through some practices or processes, self-healing work, and they'll have allotted, let's say, half an hour or an hour for a particular aspect of this work. But they move through this process and end up spending what they believe to be much more time in order to go ahead and complete perhaps a particular step in something that they're working through. But when they have completed and they look at the clock, they realize that only 30 minutes has passed, when it felt like they were expending 45 minutes to an hour. So that extended time working with us in our efforts. And I've experienced both of these on multiple occasions. From the highest perspective, from the perspective of the whole of unexpressed consciousness, time does not exist. However, many there misunderstand that time does not exist at all throughout or even within the realm of expressed consciousness, manifest reality. But that's a misunderstanding. Time exists in the realm of manifest reality. And in this reality, and I'm speaking particularly now to our little corner of the universe, in the third density dimension of this corner of the universe, in particular, time time matters in terms of our co-creational choices. And here's what I'm getting at. And this is in the context of the nearing convergence point. It is nearing. The drastically reduced lifespan of the acutely regressed mind-body complex and our soul's functioning through that mind-body complex in this incarnation, at this time, in this reality, time is extremely limited. In other words, we only have so many years, months, weeks, days, hours, and minutes in which to go about the work of fulfilling soul's purpose, soul's unique purpose in this incarnation. So time is a factor. And this is very apparent when we observe what is going on within us, around us, and in the greater reality. This is why we're seeing, being witness to, the increased intensity, the increased push, the increased frequency of steering human consciousness towards more intensely regressive dominant co-creation. You know, the quote insanity that's unfolding. It's building, increasing, intensifying. And this is because those who currently hold sway over this reality, are keenly aware not only of the time of transition, and that this evolution, human consciousness evolution cycle, is unfolding into the next, that this is all unfolding, but they're keenly aware of the nearing point of convergence. Thus, the increasing intensity of the regressive dominant qualities of consciousness, states of being, and co-creation that are unfolding in this reality. They're seeking to ramp things up, in other words. Well, you might ask, well, why are they doing this? Towards what end? Toward what end? How does this relate to the transition of this cycle into the next? Well, within the context of their understanding of the nearing point of convergence, they are responding to and taking steps to ensure that their dominion over this reality continues into the next cycle, the next human consciousness evolution cycle. And they really are pulling out all the stops, just a few of which are using their artificial technologies to tamper with organic, innate portals of various ilk within this reality. Portals between this reality, between this density dimension and other density dimensions, between this reality and other realities. For the purpose of enabling extremely regressive dominant beings and entities to enter this reality. This reality, various areas and facets of this reality, certain segments of society, certain geographical locations, have become so regressive dominant in quality and condition that these regressive beings are now energetically compatible with our reality. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to move through these vortexes, through these portals. There has to be level of awareness, some degree of level of awareness, and energetic emanation, vibrational compatibility, which also ties into the overseers increasing push to more regressive dominant conditions and co-creations in this reality, making it working round the clock to make sure that there are enough areas of this reality with which these extremely regressive dominant beings and entities are compatible in order to facilitate their capacities for entering into this reality, to further regress things, to further more intensely contribute to the downward regressive spiral going on here. So it's this cycle, one step building and feeding upon the other towards their ultimate goal of being able to continue holding dominion over this reality into, or I should say, over this reality as our current evolution cycle unfolds into the next. And they know they only have so much, quote, time to accomplish this. Pardon me. How else can you account for the increasing intensity? Pardon me. Which brings me to timelines. Timelines are a co-creational energy and also a co-creational venue within our co-creational venue, if you will. Time is both. Time is a co-creational tool, as well as sort of a sub co-creational venue. This reality comprises many timelines that blink in and out of existence, so to speak, in response to co-creational unfoldments, in response to the energetic emanations and the quality of those energetic emanations from not only the beings and entities who function and co-create within, but in response to various non-innate, various adventitious energies that have been introduced into this reality and their energetic emanations. Everything's interconnected and interdependent. So all of these things and many more influence the blinking in and out of timelines. But within this reality, there are one or two, perhaps as many as three, primary timelines. And when I use the term primary, I'm referring to the timelines wherein the aggregate of human consciousness are entangled, so to speak, that are in energetic vibrational emanation compatibility with, thus serving to increase the potency, the viability, the intensity of that timeline. In other words, to strengthen that timeline. It is my understanding that the primary, and in the case of this reality, it's a regressive-dominant timeline based on or in reaction to the regressive-dominant nature of our reality at this time, is the transhumanism timeline. Intensely regressive dominant timeline. Because it originates in intensely regressive dominant energies and unfolds therefrom. Timelines, keep in mind that this time of transition, this transitional process, the unfoldment of this evolution cycle into the next, can be likened to a grand-scale birthing process. So timelines more than ever, there's more activity, so to speak, around and upon timelines, contracting and expanding. And this is always the case. But as we near that convergence point, where in this cycle, our current cycle ends and the next one begins, that point, that shift from one to the other, these contractions and expansions are increasing. So the overseers are having to work harder than ever to maintain the viability during this of this transhumanism timeline because of these increased contractions and expansions going on. So in other words, they're pulling out all the stops to really stabilize the primary regressive dominant timelines, whereupon the aggregate of human consciousness or I should say wherein the aggregate of human consciousness is entangled, so to speak. And why do they want this? Why are they working so hard to continually building the potency, the viability of the primary regressive dominant timelines, in particular the transhumanism timeline? Pardon me, so that it will be so potent, so energetically potent, energetically viable and stable that it flows without missing a beat into the next evolution cycle, uninterrupted. And this is important because this is one of the ways, if this is accomplished, then that's indicative of the continually, the continual downward spiraling of human consciousness. The regressive downward spiral. Thereby enabling and giving them more, quote, power, juicing up their efforts to continue regressing human consciousness for the purpose of strengthening and expanding their abilities to exploit human energetic emanations. Their service to self agendas to exploit human energetic emanations. Some refer to this as loosh. And the book gets into the various ways in which they use these energetic emanations. The reasons they, quote, harvest them go well beyond just feeding upon them. They use these energies for a number of other things. Again, all toward the fulfillment of their regressive dominant agendas. Their agendas to continue holding dominion over human consciousness and co-creation. However, the more and more progression-oriented timelines are not just flickering in and out, but gaining stability, gaining potency. Becoming more stable. Because more people are stepping into this work, working to co-creationally align with purpose. Are stepping into the process for the first time in this reality. So this contributes to those energies, the energetic emanations of those co-creational actions contribute to the stability of more progression-oriented timelines. Those kinds of energetic emanations help stabilize, enabling those who are becoming more stable in these higher vibration emanations to begin stepping into the flow of these more progression-oriented timelines, which in turn enable more people to become aware of them, to sense into them as they become more stable, enabling others to be able to step into those timelines, further stabilizing that timeline, enabling more and more people to be able to sense into that timeline, those timelines, and so on. Another key unfoldment as part of this cycle transition process, particularly as we come nearer to the point of convergence, this reality, in keeping with the principles of creation, the ongoing perpetual balancing process, and I have a number of prior videos that will help you get a better understanding of that, but the book will also really expand upon that. The principles of creation, the perpetual balancing process. So in keeping with the principles of creation, this reality is literally being flooded with highly progressive dominant cosmic energies and forces of consciousness. Various solar and planetary and galactic infusions. Very high vibration, very progressive dominant, progressive quality of consciousness dominant energies and forces of consciousness. In order, as part of the perpetual balancing process, to offset the increasing intensity, frequency, and pervasiveness of the regressive qualities of consciousness and co-creational unfoldments therefrom in this reality, the balancing process. However, contrary to some New Age misinformation, disinformation, this is not about just sitting back and soaking in the rays, so to speak. In other words, we have to, in order to transduce and receive energetic benefit from those very high vibration energies and forces of consciousness, we have to prepare ourselves, bring ourselves into at least minimal energetic compatibility with those energies and forces of consciousness. Because that is the way we are able to transduce them, for them to move through us in ways that don't literally make us ill or overwhelm us. Many people, I talk to people frequently who describe to me various out of the blue, mysterious kinds of ailments very healthy people. Ailments that they can't, even a physician can't get their arms around, can't properly diagnose, they can't tune into energetically. Even these very highly sensitive energy people, these souls that I work with, they're having difficulty being able to figure out what's going on. Some people are experiencing out of the blue bouts of depression or just extreme emotionality out of the blue. That they can't trace back to a particular source or reason. And many are experiencing bouts of extreme exhaustion. Well, what's going on here? In many of these cases, these individuals knowing that they are progressive, dominant, co-creationally purposed, are not yet in alignment. They're getting closer because they're feeling the impact of these energies. But they're not yet quite fully in at least minimal vibrational and level of awareness compatibility. Perhaps they're in level of awareness compatibility, but not high enough vibration, energetic emanation compatibility with these energies. So they're seeking to ramp up their efforts, their self-mastery, co-creational alignment with purpose and soul's unique purpose efforts, the fulfillment of those, attunement and co-creational alignment with those purposes. This is the means by which we are able to become compatible with those much higher vibration cosmic energies and forces of consciousness. Many people are not feeling any effects. And that's for a number of reasons. I'm not going to get into that. But there are many people who are feeling no impact of this influx of energies. Whether progressive dominant purposed or regressive dominant co-creationally purposed beings. Some are not experiencing or experiencing it very minimally. And there are different reasons for that. But in addition to the influxes of those energies and forces of consciousness, there is also a huge influx, and has been over the course of some time now, a massive increase of souls who are progressive, extremely progressive, dominant, encoded beings into this reality, incarnating into this reality. Some of them being not just as a result of, I'm talking beyond the reincarnation process. I'm talking about advanced beings, some of them human, some of them not. Very advanced souls, very highly progressive, dominant, co-creationally purposed souls. And I've had a number of clients and others in my inner circle ask me, in terms of feeling sort of like those of us on this journey are pretty few and far between. In that context, how many progressive dominant souls are now functioning in this reality as a result of, or in direct accordance with, the unfoldment of the transition cycle, nearing the convergence point. And in keeping with the principles of co-creation and the perpetual balancing process, there would be at least as many progressive dominant co-creationally purposed beings participating in this reality as there are regressive dominant co-creationally purposed beings functioning in this reality. And it is my understanding, again, in keeping with the principles of creation, that the ratio of progressive dominant co-creationally purposed people is much higher than the number of regressive dominant co-creationally purposed beings in this reality. Because of the extremely regressive dominant conditions and unfoldments in this reality. In other words, in order to bring this reality into balance, more into balance, it's going to take a higher ratio of progressive to regressive beings and entities co-creating here in order to offset the extremity of the regressive conditions in this reality. So, in order to, I just want to bring this home again, in order to become energetically compatible, energetic emanation, rate of vibration compatible with not only more progression-oriented timelines, but with this influx of energies and forces. Our individual aggregate rates of energetic vibration have to become compatible with both. And many individuals in the New Age community, again back to the New Age community, misinformation and disinformation, just sitting back and saying, I'm taking in all of these energies are going to elevate my vibrations to compatibility with the dimension of choice, seems to be the fifth dimension for some reason. Well, that's not going to happen. It can't happen because we are encoded to participate in this process, in this cycle transition process and every other major process going on in this reality. We are encoded with our unique roles by way of our unique ratios of progressive to regressive qualities of consciousness in terms of our mission in the unfoldment of co-creation itself, the co-creational and perpetual balancing processes. We each have our unique roles in those unfoldments from an encoding standpoint. And that's encoded purpose. And unique purpose is the various ways we go about attuning to and fulfilling that purpose within this particular incarnation, in this particular reality, at this particular point in time. which is a very crucial point in time in terms of the evolution of human consciousness. In terms of becoming energetically, vibrationally compatible, first of all, in order to be able to transduce and receive progression-oriented benefit from those energies and forces of consciousness, but also to become level of awareness and energetically compatible with progression-oriented timelines, we have to first become fully attuned to and co-creationally aligned with encoded purpose. In other words, that's our requisite springboard, the foundation from which, once we become stable there, that will in itself increase the vibratory rate of our energetic emanations, becoming stable. And that it is from that stable foundation that we are able then to begin further increasing the rate of our vibratory emanations by way of increasingly progressive dominant co-creation. In other words, extending beyond our encoded ratios of progressive to regressive qualities of consciousness. This is literally how we go about progressing soul's evolution, and this is accomplished by way of progressive dominant co-creation, alignment with our encoded progressive dominant purpose and unique purposes, by way of service to others co-creation, in contrast to regressive dominant co-creation that is characterized by service to self co-creation. And again, time comes into play. We have a limited amount of time to accomplish this, and it's important to accomplish it prior to the convergence point. And here's why. We have to allow ourselves time, first of all, to stabilize in our encoded purposes from a co-creational standpoint, energetic standpoint, before we can begin taking and co-creating from increasingly higher vibration, more progressive, higher ratios of progressive to regressive qualities of consciousness, in order to transition to and become stable on a more progressive, dominant, higher vibration timeline. And this is really important that we do our best to accomplish that before the convergence point. Because unless we're able to accomplish that, we will remain entangled with, most likely, because it's one of the primary, if not the primary, regressive dominant co-creation timelines in this reality, the transhuman timeline, the transhumanism timeline. In other words, we will be swept into, pulled along by the transhumanism timeline into the next reality, making it extremely difficult to transition to another, more progression-oriented timeline once we are swept into that wave into the next evolution cycle. So time is of significance. And again, in the context of preparing ourselves to be able to receive benefit from this inflow, this huge inflooding of these very high vibration forces of consciousness and cosmic energies. And it's important that we aspire to do so, because it is those very compatibility, our ability to transduce those energies and forces, that will enable us to ride the wave of this transition without becoming overwhelmed by it. In other words, flowing into the next evolution cycle on the wave of forces and energies and timelines apart from the regressive, extremely regressive dominant transhumanism timeline. So timelines are very important. Paying attention to, attuning to this in terms of our self-mastery, co-creational attunement to and co-creational alignment with purpose and unique purpose in this incarnation. Now, timing. Across multiple cultural exoteric religions as well as cross-cultural esoteric spiritual teachings, many of us are likely familiar with having heard everything unfolds in accordance with divine timing. And that's a universal truth. However, again, let me back up just a moment. Many people are missing the key nuance, a key nuance of that truth, if not hiding behind it. For example, everything unfolds. These are people who are aware of, if not in these terms, but that they're aware that they have, in their own terminology, they're encoded with a progressive dominant co-creational purpose. But they are sort of laggard in their efforts to keep progressing, to advance their progress, because they're sort of hiding behind, for various reasons that can run the gamut. Well, everything unfolds in accordance with divine timing. It's not up to me, in other words. It's not up to me to determine how my progression unfolds. Now, granted, there are many contributing factors beyond our comprehension in this process. But we are not separate and apart from divine timing. In other words, divine timing is not this mandate from on high that is separate and apart from us. We have co-creational input, so to speak. And that unfolds in different ways, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But accelerating our progression rates ties in directly to divine timing. Accelerating our progression rates increases the probability of attaining consciousness, level of awareness, energetic compatibility with a more progression-oriented timeline prior to the point of convergence. thereby decreasing the probability of not only your souls, but collective consciousness submersion in the transhumanism timeline. And so, working toward accelerating our progression rates, our rates of progression in this work. Gives us, quote, some say so, in divine timing. What are we if not ensouled beings? In fact, all manifest expressions of consciousness. What are we if not divine? We are all unfoldments sourced directly in the divine. Our depth of desire and commitment to this work toward fulfilling soul's purpose and soul's unique purpose by way of self-mastery and attainment, which enables the unfoldment and the acceleration of the unfoldment of attunement to and co-creational alignment with purpose and unique purpose. Our sincerity and extent of the efforts that we put toward this work. Our methods of engagement. Are we sort of just piecemealing things? Kind of hunting and pecking, oh, I'll do this here and I'll do that there, without having benefit of higher order, holistic perspectives, thus bigger picture, more accurate perspectives of what we really are, why we were created, what this reality really is, and why it was created. A holistic approach to engaging this work. And the level of awareness of higher order truths that inform all of these things. Each of the things I just mentioned being the principal determinants of our rates of progression. These are the ways we go about, these are the key factors in our efforts to increase our rates of progression. Depth of desire and commitment, the sincerity and extent of our efforts, our methods of approaching and engaging in this work, and our ongoing efforts to increase our levels of awareness of the knowledge of higher order truths that inform them. These are the principal determinants of our progression rates. And we're working from this framework of factors. We're attuned to and seeking to attune further to soul and core self-desire, our encoded purpose. And in doing so, we are aligned with our divinity, awareness of our divinity, or whatever you call that. That's not my word, but it's a word that I know many of you connect with. We are in alignment with core self-desire. With regards to timing on a personal note, when I started receiving and it intensified very quickly in a very short span of time, but intuitive signaling around writing the Self-Mastery Guidebook. From from ego's perspective, it came at a particularly, quote, inconvenient time in terms of my life circumstances and situations. You know, the work that I'm involved in, my own self-work, self-mastery, co-creational alignment with purpose, and progression work, as well as, like I said, various circumstances and situations in my life, client work, other projects that I'm working on toward that I will be making available towards helping those of you be, helping facilitate your own work in these areas. But I've been on this journey long enough to know that to ignore such potent soul source pulsations would take me off path in terms of fulfillment of my unique purpose here. And unique purpose has, the more you move along in this, the more unique purpose unfolds, the more many of us realize there are multiple facets to this, and it can change and shift over time. It's just a matter of getting more and more attuned to it, making shifts and adjustments along the way. But one of the facets of my unique purpose in this incarnation at this time, is to make more publicly available my various interpretations and understandings around self and this reality and what's really unfolding here. So, putting all that together, I knew that this was an undertaking that I needed to get cracking on, so to speak. And I also knew that there would be more challenges in my life. In other words, I knew that there would be regressive pushback, particularly pertinent to writing this book. And initially, ego kept prompting me to question the timing, working very hard to instill within me doubt around the timing, not the viability of the project, but the timing. And I came to, as I moved through the journey, I dove into this process, to this project, this major project, and as I proceeded along my way, it became clearer and clearer that it was indeed all about timing. The timing was the point. In the context of the nearing convergence point, time is of the essence, that this information, it was time for this information to be made available to a larger swath of fellow travelers. Many wonderful things have unfolded as a result of embracing this and trusting soul-sourced pulsations in the form of intuitive and conscious signaling only, quote, good can unfold from that. When your eyes are wide open and you're in tune with, you have a deep desire for and commitment to this process. Had lots of challenges along the way, but with each challenge I moved more and more quickly through them and reaped the benefits of doing so in very short order. Compressed time. Extended, expanded time that I touched on at the beginning of this commentary. On that note, I'm going to call it a wrap. Lots for you to consider and to contemplate. And if you found this information helpful, and you haven't already done so, I invite you to check out my new book and to consider purchasing it. Until next time, take care on your journey. Be true to your journey. Be true to you. I'm going to back up for just a second. One more thing that I feel is important to tell you, to just bring it home in terms of your soul source signaling. That is you communicating with you. You on you. You in you. Direct, inbuilt, inner gut wisdom and guidance from core self. Pointing you to what you need to be doing. So trust it. Embrace it. You connecting with you. Okay. That's it. Until next time, take care. Bye for now.